guest, Larry Cushing of Liberty Ship Technology. Larry has 25 plus years as a technology leader, working as both a consultant and engineering expert for various companies. In 2020, he joined Liberty Ship Technology Group, where he established a strategic consulting practice. This practice offers clients services such as technology assessments, vendor selection, technology expense management, and virtual CIO services. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, our Fireside Chats will be a recurring event where we will bring together industry leaders, experts, and practitioners to discuss the latest trends, best practices, and real-world applications of Microsoft Teams Voice. We encourage you to participate, ask questions using the Teams Q&A feature, and engage with our speakers throughout the session. So without further delay, let's dive into today's discussion.
Great. Well, thanks. Well, Larry, tell us a little about yourself. I know that on the registration form, there was a little bit of a bio, but I think it'll be a lot more meaningful coming from you.
Yeah, so I started out many years ago as an engineer in the field, Microsoft focused. Spent many years doing a lot of consulting projects around Exchange, Active Directory. Built up a MSP practice that was a combination of MSP services as well as hosted voice using a BroadSoft cluster from NGT. Sold that back in 2014 to a company in Boston area, which was DSCI, which was quickly adopted into TPX. So I spent the last 5 years just before the pandemic as the chief technology evangelist. So I went around and praising all the wonderful developments in technology from voice, video, security, and services. And as I stated, in 2020, after the pandemic hit, decided to return back to my roots and work primarily here in New England with local clients on their technology planning, budgeting, and also strategic implementations when it comes to communication platforms and security.
Well, thanks, Larry. And again, we're it's a pleasure having you on this on the Fireside Chat. So, what key factors do you believe have contributed to your success as a technology consultant?
The biggest item that I've always really used as my as the core concept was, what is the best for the client? So today, when we meet with customers, we're really helping them try to identify what technologies they need to implement to support their existing organization in the direction that they plan to go. And when it comes to evaluating communication systems, infrastructure, it's really looking at it as what is right for this specific client. I think some organizations take an approach that, they have a certain set or combination of technologies, and that's what they're going to deploy to everyone. So again, a lot of our clients, they refer to us from the planning and implementation. Although our company doesn't do the implementation, think of us as like the general contractor of technology. They come to us, say, here is what our needs or requirements are. We help draft the design, the plan, and then we make sure we have the right partners and suppliers to deliver.
One of the things that we live by here at UniVoIP is we tell everyone as a way to ensure everybody is able to be autonomous and be able to assist customers in scenarios that maybe they haven't encountered, is to ask themselves, what's in the best interest of the customer, and then they make the decision according to that. And so that's something we practice here on a daily basis. We ask ourselves, what's in the best interest of the customer? Because I think if we do that, then we increase our chances of success.
And as you stated, you want the customers to know that you're looking out for what their needs are. And again, when we're looking at computer systems for them, like, I don't care, you want Mac, you want Windows machines, what models are make, what is the right thing for your company, and then make sure it's adopted. Then that way they feel they're not just taking a standard cookie cutter that everyone gets. And
Yeah.
the other part to that is, as you stated, is understanding your customer. I think it's a challenge when a company gets to the point where I'm like, do you know what that client does when they call in and they have a problem? No, I have no idea. I don't know if they're an accounting firm, a law firm, a bank. That's a problem, because when you don't understand what the client does, then you can't really understand the priority concerns that they could have.
Yep. Yep. I just turned on my light.
I
I
like
forgot
that.
to turn it on.
That as
Um,
well.
so, what are some of your common challenges, in your consulting work, and how do you overcome them?
I think one of the challenges, just coming from the engineering background, is that I tend to get very deep in the weeds on the technical aspects of a lot of products and services. And as we know, the clients or a lot of clients are like, that isn't as important to me. What I want to know is, does it work? Will my users have good adoption of it? When I have issues and problems, do I get good support? So I think when it comes to helping really understand what a client needs, I dig deep into understanding all the different product sets and items. So at the beginning, I can ferret out what are the different criteria and stuff for the client to help narrow down what supplier would be best for the service that they're looking for.
Yeah. Um, that's it rings true with me as well. It's nice to have confirmation of that strategy working for others. So let's shift to market. How do you see market shifting from a traditional UCaaS to VoIP solutions that involve a collaboration suite such as Microsoft Teams phone system?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to be around long enough. One half of my company was almost 20 years old in voice. So again, back then it was hosted VoIP. That's what we sold and delivered. And it was really, again, just using a BroadSoft cluster, connecting phones over a SIP. We normally had to install dedicated circuits in order to guarantee performance, no running over the top, or no supporting home users. And as we saw a lot of the premise-based solutions sort of starting to finally articulate, um, the ability to deliver voice successfully has evolved tremendously since 20 years ago. I remember going in and having to run assessments to see if the network can support it, the internet connection. And now we've got to a point where, people are just used to joining, using FaceTime and, all of these other communication platforms. They just take for granted the performance and the delivery. And I think as we've seen Microsoft, I was looking back, I became a certified engineer back in 1999. And, Microsoft never did anything with voice. I mean, that was a completely different part of the closet. In fact, we were even happier when that wasn't even plugged into any of our stuff. Fast forward to where it is now, the communication platform. To me, I think the biggest thing for adoption for users is comfort of use. If users are used to using a product like Teams, I normally go, it's pretty simple. Now there's a little icon with a number pad on it. There is no difference. You use exactly the same. So I have seen, obviously, and you have as well, Dean, Teams 5 years ago was nowhere near what it is today. And I think Microsoft has made really big inroads into making it a much more comprehensive voice platform. Of course, we've been out there and worked with the different providers. You got Cisco that buys up, 3 or 4 different platforms, and you're trying to figure out which one is their latest one that they're supplying and supporting. But I would say that most of my clients, the first thing I ask them is, do you use Microsoft Teams? And when they're like, yeah, we use it for internal chat and talking to each other, and we've got channels set up, then it's a natural progression to just enable voice in there.
Yeah. By the way, I'm a recovering engineer myself, and so
So you know
I
how
get
you
the
have to
challenges
understand
when you
each of
try
the
to get.
components. Like you get so far in the weeds of how many calls and how many people can I have on chat and how does this work and that works. I will say one of the challenges I've seen is that Microsoft is continuing to make a lot of improvements in Teams. So, but it is no different if you're using Ring Central or Zoom or any of the other product sets that we see out there. To me, again, if you can get folks to really adopt Teams as their primary application inside their industry for their users, then they love being able to use it for voice.
Yeah, public, you mentioned 15, 20 years ago, when we deployed hosted VoIP, hosted PBX, before it was called cloud and unified communications as a service, really dependent heavily on that network connection. And you're right, we had dedicated data connections for voice, because you couldn't, the public IP wasn't as robust as it is today. We had all kinds of issues. So therefore, in order to guarantee SLAs, we had to drop in a private connection for our voice traffic. But we've come a long way. That's no longer the case. I will tell you the vast majority of UCaaS providers and VoIP services, including Microsoft Teams, is over the top. It is encrypted, of course, but there isn't an issue with it. In fact, many organizations that are using Microsoft for their collaboration and not their phone system, they're actually using it to have meetings and video calls and even peer-to-peer internal calls. And if they can do that, then they can go to the PSTN, right? We are connected on a voice-optimized private connection, private Azure connection to Microsoft on the back end. That's part of the Operator Connect certification process. So we're connected on a voice-optimized private circuit on the back end to Microsoft. The front end, how your organization connects to it, really depends on who you are and how you want to connect. I do know that the vast majority just go over the top, and we don't have the level of issues that we used to have like 20 years ago. So for us, it hasn't been an issue. We don't have to dwell on, well, what's your internet connection? Is this going to work? We just tell them, why don't you just have a meeting? Is your meeting working? Your meeting is working, then you're fine. Let's go forward.
You're right. I mean, you remember back when we were always having to deal with the firewalls, and I remember the older Cisco PICs. They would cause problems, and some of the older firewalls, we began to have to circumvent the firewall because the firewall was inspecting the traffic, causing delays and issues. And I think even from the last 5 years, there's been a tremendous increase in the ability for the internet, but also most people's computers, laptops, phones now to support these apps and support them well. I mean, you remember the old apps that you would have on your cell phone, and it would call. If you were on a data call and you had a physical call come in, it would just like disconnect or stick the other one on hold. So there was all these challenges, and now it's just a seamless experience.
Yeah, it really is. I think that the Microsoft mobile app, Microsoft Teams mobile app, is second to none in terms of voice quality and just the various functions that it has. They've really done a good job. And I know many of our customers have migrated to Microsoft Teams because of that soft phone, because of that Teams client being so reliable. And that's one of the drivers, right? You get a better, consistent experience across all devices. But what other drivers behind this shift, in your view, Larry?
I think the remote workforce obviously is a huge one. So, no longer brick and mortar, having a physical phone in the office. I remember it was probably 4 or 5 years ago when we did a new client down in New York, and the order came through and it got kicked back. And the ordering team said, "You must have missed something. There's no physical phones." And we said, "The client doesn't want any physical phones." They're like, "What? None?" None. And they were like, "Okay, 80 seats, no physical phones." Correct. When we asked the people, they're like, "Why would I want a physical phone?" And again, that was really definitely a company that was very, uh, had a much younger uh, set of users, but they go, "I have it on my laptop and my phone because I work from our different remote offices, from home, from the hotel." And that has just changed the whole dynamics. I mean, the idea of a physical phone now is almost the opposite. How few phones does this client need, on this next project?
Of the tens of thousands of users that are using our voice with their Microsoft Teams deployment and phone system, I would say 95% of them do not use a purpose-built device. They don't use a phone. I have a phone on my desk, but it's might as well be a paperweight because it doesn't give me the level of productivity that I'm used to by being able to chat and um, share a file and do all the things that I do in Teams. The phone, it's just a phone, right? So I can do that here, and I'm a lot more productive. One more thing that I think often gets overlooked is, not only the user experience is better, your IT overhead costs are lower as well, because of the fact that you're using one source of truth, one platform, intra ID, as the place where all your users are defined. And so you're not having to manage multiple platforms. It's one thing tied into one source of truth for authentication. And of course, that increases your security posture. But you've been involved in some of the deployments, without Microsoft and with Microsoft. What are some of the things that you can share with the audience in terms of how that actually reduced IT overhead costs?
I would say one of the unique things that has come along with all of the hosted platforms is, again, when I grew up, when I had all dark hair, not gray hair through here, I was an Exchange engineer, worked on SQL servers, SNA gateways, Active Directory, everything else. We never touched phone systems. Like, no. Even when Microsoft said we're buying and creating a product called Link and all this stuff, we're like, no, I don't want to deal with it. It's not my realm. That's not IT. That's telephony. That's in a different group. We don't touch it here. Now, fast forward, where so much is in Office 365, you have to understand how Entra works, how you configure your policies and stuff within Teams, within SharePoint, within your Office products themselves. Teams, you're already in there dealing with it. Are you allowed to create a channel? Are you allowed to invite people from outside your company, chat, swap files? So the ability to activate voice in there is now just a section. And I found that coming from very much not wanting to touch the phone system, but I mean, Dean, you remember the older phone systems. In order to change something, you used to have to go in the back room, and it was a almost like a green screen kind of interface. And now it's just very intuitive. So I think that the IT departments and stuff are now much more comfortable in saying, I can take this additional responsibility and configuration on because I'm already doing it. I've got to create the account, assign the licenses, create the email address. I can assign the phone number, put them in the appropriate groups. So I think you're seeing a lot of folks now learning that ecosystem within Office 365, specifically with a lot of the teams. And they're like, oh, we just trained one of the last companies that, we onboarded with UniVoIP. They had 2 new staff come in. I trained them on the interface, both on UniVoIPs for assigning the phone numbers and on the team side. And, 2 hours, hour and a half, they were like, that's it. I'm like, yeah, that's basically it. That's how you change everything. And, I know they've had lots of changes, requests come in, and they have yet to have to call to say, can you help me with something? So I think that has really helped with the adoption as well.
Yeah, definitely. The IT overhead costs sometimes are not mentioned, but you don't need a telephone guy on your staff. Anyone that's familiar with how to set up Office 365, setting up voice is just, a small subset of that, which can be easily learned by somebody who's learned, everything else with Office 365. Can you share some success stories with some of your recent customers in migrating to Teams?
Yeah, so we have a client that's they write software for banks for fraud detection, check fraud detection, and they're on both East and West Coast. And they had a physical office in the New York area, and because everyone is pretty much remote, they're like, we don't need our brick and mortar anymore. And the phone system really wasn't doing it for them anyway, because it was all a traditional on-site premise phone system. So they were using Teams exclusively for all their chat communications with each other. So again, it was a very, very easy item to adopt and add. They didn't really have a whole lot of complexity. So that was a very simple project. The other one that we did recently was a public library. That was a bit more of a challenge. I think some of what I learned from there is, people get entrenched in ways that they do things. And anytime you move from one technology to another or one system from another, you're going to have to learn a new way of doing it. And we did, in combination with working with your support team, help them build in some bridges, where I understood what they used to do, and we found ways of sort of mimicking it in the new platform. But at the same time, we had to just sit down and say, that's not the way it's done anymore. Let me show you how you do it now. Call forwarding is a great example. And we proved to them it's the same number of keys that you have to hit. It's just a different way of doing it.
In some cases, it's actually there is no keys. You type the name of the person that you're trying to manage, right? I've always maintained that for customers, the way to look at this is to, instead of saying, I used to do this and push that and do this, just tell us what you're trying to accomplish. Because sometimes if you start with a blank canvas, you can get to things much faster, much more efficiently than anything you've done in the past. Of course, we understand, to fill that gap, that bridge, to bring you into the new migration is to allow you to do things that you used to be able to do on your old system, but also open it up for you so you can explore and decide for yourself which is easier. And over time, they'll forget, why they had to have extension numbers, for example, right? Now they can just type the name. It's time and time again, customers will come into this by trying to replicate what they have, and then over time they adopt. And that's one of the reasons we offer a proof of concept, like a trial, a 30-day free trial, so customers can just test things in their own environment without actually committing to change their, port the telephone numbers. Of course, we port numbers and all that. But before that, we'll give you some temporary numbers that you can assign and figure out how to transfer, how to consult and transfer. Like on your old phone system, could you transfer by typing, maybe chatting? Maybe the guy is on the other phone and they're talking and you want to transfer another call to them? Well, what if you can chat with them and say, hey, I've got this call. What do you want to do with it? And they'll say, send it to voicemail. Click voicemail. Have them hold. Tell them I call them back, right? Just by typing. That's something that you could never even think about doing on a traditional PBX. And that's what I mean by expanding the possibilities and not just being relegated to how you used to do things because of the restrictions of your old phone system. There are a whole slew of things that you can adopt to increase productivity.
I would agree. I think that the last larger project, taking in all the phone numbers and then looking at the call tree and everything else, it was such a mess. And I'm just like, what do you actually want to do? Like, if somebody calls, what do you want their options to be? Where do you want it to go? Do you want to go at this point to a group, one person? Do you want an announcement? So I think it's a good time. For the last several projects that I did, I realized that the older phone system, nobody liked, and they didn't like the way it worked. So it was easier to sit down and say, well, how would you like the new one to work? And we will build that out. And then, as you stated, we can call it and test it, verify, does that sound good? Is that what you expect, the different options in the flow? And then when we pour it over, it's already there. But I would say that's the number one thing, is don't go in thinking that what their phone system is set up like today makes sense to anyone. It's asking, like your question, like, what would you really like this thing to do? I think the difficulty there is sometimes people don't know what it's capable of. So that's where our consulting helps with understanding the feature sets. Would you, I hear what you're saying, would you like to be able to just put it on your phone? Oh yeah, that would be, okay, that's an option.
Yeah, that's great. So I know we are coming up, we've got about a minute or so. If anyone's got any kind of a specific question, please feel free to put it into the Q&A. Again, I want to thank Larry. We value your partnership. I think we're going to do great things together. I know you've, I've had several projects under your belt, and so you really see the value, and I know you will transfer that value over to your customers and help them in that decision-making process, and of course in the migration process. And we're so glad to have you on board. Our management application is built with a partner in mind, and I also want to thank everyone else that's joined this call. I hope you found this valuable, and hope to see everyone soon. Any last words, Larry?
No, like I said, other than, it took me a while to find the right group, and I think I have with the last 3 projects that we did with UniVoIP, and looking forward to many more.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Nicholas, for putting this together, and thank you for everyone participating. See you next month. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.